So, friends, after getting the concepts of different population parameters like measures of central tendency, measures of dispersion, then probability and probability distribution, then different sampling procedures. Now, we'll be discussing today about the statistical inferences. So there are methodology by which we can make certain assumptions about the population, and based on and we will try to evaluate those assumptions based on certain test criteria or test statistics. So the conclusion that we will be making after validation will be known as statistical inference. So this statistical inference, it will be consisting mainly of two steps. Just we will introduce the topic, and then we will be going to different components of statistical inference. So what is statistical inference? It is a branch of statistics concerned with using probability concept. So here in this branch of statistics, we are using the concept of probability to deal with uncertainty in decision making. So whenever we have to take decision, there will be certain kind of uncertainty. So to reduce that uncertainty, or to make that uncertainty into certainty, we have to, or we will be using the probability concepts. So already we have seen the concept of probability and probability distribution. Based on those concepts, here in statistical inferences, we will be using those concepts, and thereby we will be able to make certain conclusion or decision. So it is a process of selecting and using a sample statistics to draw inference about the population parameter based on the sample drawn from the population. So what we will be doing here, suppose this is the population, we'll take sample from that population, then we'll select certain sample statistics, and we'll be studying this sample with the help of those statistics, and then we'll be making certain conclusion regarding what? Conclusion regarding the population parameters, and that too by studying the sample, so that we can make certain decision or certain assumptions or interpretation about the population. So basically this statistical inference is mainly we have to study the sample and we have to draw conclusion about the population. So this statistical inference deals with two components. First one is hypothesis testing, and second one is the estimation. So what we will do today in this lecture, we will be discussing about the hypothesis testing, how we are testing the hypothesis. So this procedure is to test some hypothesis about the parent population. So we are making certain hypothesis about the population from which sample has been drawn, and then we will be estimating. We will go for second procedure, that is estimation, which is used to the statistics obtained from sample as estimate of unknown parameter of the population. So what we will get here in estimation, we will estimate the unknown parameter of the population. So this estimation procedure, if you want to estimate the population parameter, then we have to go for estimation procedure. So here in this lecture, we will be concentrating mainly on hypothesis testing. So here you can see statistical inference. It may be divided into two major areas. First one is parameter estimation, which includes point estimation and interval estimation. This we will be dealing in the next lecture. But here today we will be concentrating on the hypothesis testing. So this hypothesis testing, the decision making procedure about the hypothesis. So first of all, we have to make certain hypothesis, and then we have to test the hypothesis, so whether our hypothesis is correct or it is wrong. So what is hypothesis? So hypothesis testing always begins with the assumption. always begins with an assumption, and that assumption is called as hypothesis. That assumption is called as hypothesis, and that assumption we make about the population parameter. So what is hypothesis in case of statistical from a statistical point of view? What is hypothesis? It is the assumption that we are making about the population parameter, or it is simply a quantitative statement. It is simply a quantitative statement about the population. So whatever quantitative statement that we are making about the population is called as hypothesis. We can understand it in another way. A famous scientist has described hypothesis. Actually, it is an island in the uncharted sea of thoughts to be used as basis for consolidation and recuperation as we advance into the unknown. So that means we want to say that if there is complete black, or if there is complete water everywhere, so this hypothesis is just like an island, where we can rest and we can consolidate ourselves and recuperate for further advancement into the sea. So this is about the hypothesis, definition of hypothesis. In nutshell, we can say that it is a quantitative statement that we are making about the quantitative statement as an assumption that we are making about the population. Now, what are the procedure in hypothesis testing? So in this lecture, I will be concentrating mainly on hypothesis testing. So there are different procedures about the hypothesis testing. The first one is state null and alternate hypothesis. So first of all, we have to say about the null and alternate hypothesis. So what is null and alternate hypothesis? We will be discussing further in this lecture. Then step 2, select a level of significance. So second step is we have to select the level of significance. What is level of significance, that we will be seeing today, and then also in separate class we will be seeing about the level of significance. Then step 3 is identify the test statistics. So which test statistics we have to apply, that also we have to comes in under the third step. Then step 4 is the formulate a decision rule. We have to formulate a decision rule, and then finally we have to arrive at a decision. So with the help of decision rule, we have to arrive at a decision. What are the decisions? There will be only 2 decisions. That is, do not reject null hypothesis. That means you accept the null hypothesis, or the second one is the reject null hypothesis. So based on this step 5, based on the decision, we have to take either of these 2 decisions. So now we will be seeing one by one. So first step is set up a hypothesis. So first thing in hypothesis testing is to set up a hypothesis about the population parameter. So we have to assume certain thing about the population parameter. Generally, we are setting up 2 different hypotheses. We can set many hypotheses, but generally we are setting up 2 different hypotheses. What are those 2 different hypotheses? First one is null hypothesis, and second one is alternate hypothesis. Null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. So what is null hypothesis? So here you can see it is, this null hypothesis means insignificant or no relationship between the 2 variables. Suppose we want to make relationship between the 2 variables, like correlation, relationship between the 2 variables. So in null hypothesis, we are assuming that there is insignificant or no relationship between the variables, whereas in alternate hypothesis means rejection of null hypothesis. Whatever hypothesis other than null hypothesis is called as alternate hypothesis. So let us see it in detail. So first is null hypothesis. So it is hypothesis of no difference. Hypothesis of no difference, which is tested for possible rejection under the assumption that it is true. So this null hypothesis is hypothesis of no difference. Suppose you have drawn a sample from a population, and now your null hypothesis is that mean of this sample is similar, or there is no difference between the mean of the sample and mean of the population. So this is called as null hypothesis, which is hypothesis of no difference. It asserts that no true difference exists between the estimate and population parameter, and the observed difference is not real but it is due to sampling fluctuation. So, what null hypothesis is stating, it states that there is no true difference between the estimate and population parameter. That is, there is no difference between the sample and the population parameter, and whatever differences, small differences or insignificant differences are coming, that is due to the sampling fluctuation. That means we have taken wrong sample, or there is sampling fluctuation. So there is difference in the samples only. That is why their difference exists. So in another way, you can say null hypothesis is similar to legal principle. In law, it is said that a man is innocent until proven guilty. So you cannot say a man is guilty until he has been sentenced by the court. Similarly, here null hypothesis is the hypothesis of no difference. So until and unless you are proving it wrong, that there is true difference between the sample and population, till then, if you are not proving, till then the null hypothesis will be considered as correct one. Now, what is alternate hypothesis? So alternate hypothesis is complementary. It is complementary to the null hypothesis. It is called as alternate hypothesis. Thus, any hypothesis other than null hypothesis is called as alternate hypothesis. So null hypothesis is fixed, that is no difference between sample and population, whereas any other assumptions that you are making about the population or any other hypothesis that you are making about the population is called as alternate hypothesis. So the conclusion which we accept when null hypothesis is rejected, suppose you are testing the hypothesis, null hypothesis, and you arrive at a conclusion that okay, null hypothesis is getting rejected. So whatever things that you are accepting, if you are rejecting null hypothesis, you will be accepting something. So whatever things you are accepting is called as alternate hypothesis. So this was the difference between the null and alternate hypothesis. Here you can see how we are proposing our hypothesis, how we will be writing our hypothesis. Here you can see the first is null hypothesis. So null hypothesis is indicated by H naught or H0. That is why due to this symbol 0 or naught, it is called as null hypothesis. Null hypothesis, which assumes that x bar, that is sample mean, is equal to the mu, that is population mean. So in words you can write H0 hyphen sample mean is similar to population mean, or in the form of notation you can write H0 hyphen x bar is equal to mu. Similarly, we can write alternate hypothesis. So what is alternate hypothesis? It is indicated by A for alternate, or H1. So H0 or H1 hyphen x bar, that is population mean, is not equal to x bar is that is sample mean, is not equal to mu, that is population mean. So alternate hypothesis states that, in words you can write, alternate hypothesis states that population mean is not similar to sample mean, or sample mean is not similar to population mean. So what may be the possibility? Either the sample mean will be greater than population mean, or it will be lesser than the population mean. So here also you can write alternate hypothesis in another way also. HA is equal to x bar greater than mu, or HA is equal to x bar lesser than mu. So these are also the alternate hypothesis. So null hypothesis, there will be only one null hypothesis, but there can be many alternate hypotheses. Now the second step is set up a significance level. So what you have to do in the second step of hypothesis testing, you have to set the significance level. So what is significance level? After setting hypothesis, we have to test the validity of null hypothesis against alternate hypothesis. So once you have setted the hypothesis, null hypothesis, you have to test now null hypothesis against alternate hypothesis. At what on what? So on certain level of significance. So what is level of significance? The confidence with which we reject or accept a null hypothesis depends on significance level adopted. So we have to adopt certain significance level, and with certain confidence we have to say that okay, this null hypothesis is either rejected or accepted. So that confidence is coming with the help of level of significance that we are setting. So it is expressed in terms of percentage. So we are expressing this level of significance in terms of percentage. Suppose you have fixed the level of significance at 5%. That means what it indicates? This 5% indicates that in long run, if you are performing n number of experiment, n number of such similar experiment, so in long run there will be every possibility that we can make wrong decision by about 5% of the times. So if you are conducting 100 such experiment, there is every possibility that 5 times your conclusion may be wrong. So here you can see this is the normal distribution curve, and here we have set the confidence level of 95%. 95%. That means what is level of significance? Level of significance is only 5%. 5% is the level of significance. That means in the whatever measurement that you are taking is falling within this 95% region, then we will be accepting the null hypothesis. But if this the measurement that we have taken is falling in this area, in this extreme area, that means 2.5% this side and 2.5% this side, then we will be rejecting the null hypothesis and we will be accepting the alternate hypothesis. So this is called as level of significance. Level of significance on both the sides, either on negative side and positive side. This is called as two-tailed test. So in next lecture or in coming lecture, we will be discussing about the one-tailed test and two-tailed test also. At that point of time, we will be again discussing about the significance level. But here in the hypothesis testing, you have to remember that first you have to set hypothesis, then you have to set the significance level. Now, the third step is setting a test criteria. Now you have to set the test criteria. Once you have set the hypothesis, then level of significance, the third step is you have to choose the test criteria. This involves selection of an appropriate probability distribution. So we have already studied the probability distribution. In that we had seen about the normal distribution, Poisson distribution and binomial distribution. So you have to ascertain by your experience that this particular observation is falling under which probability distribution. So based on that you have to adopt the test criteria. Example, probability distribution that are commonly used are testing procedure. Commonly used testing procedure are T distribution, F distribution and chi-square distribution. T distribution, F distribution and chi-square distribution. So based on our experience and based on the observation on which we are dealing, we have to decide which testing procedure we have to use. So test criteria must employ an appropriate probability distribution. If you are not finding appropriate probability distribution, your conclusion or the decision that you will be making may be wrong. So here you can see example, if only small sample information is available, if sample information is very small, then we cannot use the normal distribution. You cannot use the normal distribution criteria because normal distribution always works with the large size sample. So based on these kind of assumption, you have to set the test criteria. Now after setting the test criteria, you have to calculate, you have to compute. So we perform various calculative steps. What are those calculative steps? So this calculation involve testing statistics. That means the calculation of calculation based on certain formula and then standard error associated with it. So we have to find two things. One is the parameter that we want to estimate. We have to calculate based on the formula and then we have to find out the standard error associated with it. So This is the procedure of computation. Now after computation, we have to make the decision. So once you have computed, you have got the value, and this value you have to test based on the probability distribution table that we have already discussed when we were discussing about the probability distribution. So what we have to do here in the fifth step, that is in decision making step, we may draw a statistical conclusion and make decision. So the decision will be depending on whether the computed value, the value that you have computed, is falling in the region of rejection or acceptance. So that level of significance that you have already set. Suppose this is 1%. 1% you have fixed the level of significance 1%. That means 0.5% this side and 0.5% this side. Suppose your calculated value is falling in this area, then you will be accepting the null hypothesis. Otherwise, if your calculated value is falling either in this area or this area, that means 0.5% area on both the sides, then you have to reject the null hypothesis. You will be rejecting the null hypothesis and accepting the alternate hypothesis. So this is how we will make the decision. So with this, I am ending the procedure for testing hypothesis. This includes 5 steps, and each of these steps I have discussed in detail, and in the next class we will be discussing about the level of significance, or the second part of the this statistical inference, that is the estimation procedure. First, today we have discussed about the test of hypothesis. In next class we will be discussing about the estimation of the hypothesis. Thank you.